Hello and welcome to the ScatterVolt channel, and today let's go over the high-end workstation PC template for 2026. If you wanted to run complex 3D modeling software, intensive computational workloads, CAD software, or even specialized AI tasks all in a PC build that isn't some huge server rack, then my goal by the end of this video is to briefly tell you guys what CPU, motherboard, RAM, graphics card, SSD, power supply, and even PC case you should choose to build an optimal high-end workstation PC just like this. So if you wanted to skip straight to the good stuff, then I do have a full PC builds.gg link in the description down below containing the exact parts list I'm about to show you in this video if you just wanted to quickly check out the parts that I used. Otherwise, I'm going to be explaining each of my hardware choices to make this high-end workstation PC build possible. And before I get to that, I want to give a big thank you to Antec for sponsoring this video and for sending over their new Antec 900 PC case. So when it comes to the choice of processor, you've pretty much only have AMD Threadripper right now. I would not recommend going down the Intel route. Their Xeon workstation CPUs aren't what they used to be, and AMD have some much better options. However, I think for a modern day workstation PC build, unless you know you'll be using a program or utility that will explicitly use a lot of cores and threads, I really don't think you need to go super hard on a workstation CPU. If anything, I would save a bit more of your resources and budget towards investing in graphics cards, especially if we're talking about AI workloads that need a lot of PCI cards with lots of VRAM. So what I've got here in the system is a Threadripper 9970X with 32 cores and 64 threads. I personally think that is the maximum you should go with for a workstation build, unless you need, something even more than that with potentially 64 cores. However, that is fine, as well as the 9960X, which is similar to the 9970X with less cores and less threads, but it retails for much less. Again, I would really save a lot of your budget towards the graphics card options, which we will be talking about later in this video. So what are you going to choose with a Threadripper CPU? Well, you're probably going to want a Threadripper supported motherboard, which is why I have this Asus ProWS TRX50 motherboard here. So more or less, just make sure you choose a motherboard with the TRX50 chipset. It'll support all Threadripper 7000 and 9000 CPUs. But more notably, this here is an eATX sized motherboard, and you definitely want to have a bigger PC case to support bigger Threadripper motherboards like this one, which fortunately the Antec 900 can support up to SSI EEB. So if you wanted to go with a really wide Threadripper motherboard, you can thankfully support that in this sort of PC case. So yes, by going with Threadripper, you are only going to have to go with DDR5 memory. And it maybe even gets a little bit worse if we're talking about modern day RAM pricing, because you're going to have to go with RAM that is ECC verified. And what I've got here in the system is, get this, 4 sticks of 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM running at 6400 megahertz with a cache latency of 32. And that is in an expo profile that will run on this motherboard, which is highly impressive, but also highly expensive at the moment. But for workstation PCs, depending on your workload, you really ought to go with more RAM rather than having the standard amount. For a gaming PC build, you can get away with less RAM than what you actually need. A lot of people think 32 gigabytes is the recommended nowadays for a gaming PC, and really, I think 16 is more than doable in 2026. But for workstations, more RAM is always beneficial, especially for computational workloads. And the more the merrier. So if you can get at least 64 or 96 gigabytes of RAM, excellent. But I think for a high-end workstation build, you're going to want to shoot for above 100 gigabytes of RAM, like with this 128 gig of kit of RAM, which by all means might be unobtainium right now, but truth be told, you need a lot of RAM for a workstation PC build, so do what you can to get a lot of DDR5 ECC RAM. I wouldn't worry too much about speed and cache latency. I would prioritize storage and capacity above all. Which, speaking of storage, not in terms of RAM, but in terms of solid state drives and other things, I've got right here a 2 terabyte M.2 SSD from Seagate. Now, when it comes to a workstation PC build, the amount of storage you need greatly varies on your dependent workloads. If you're going to be doing a lot of rendering for either 3D modeling or some radically crazy video editing, then I think you are going to need quite a bit of storage space. And yes, while having an M.2 SSD as your boot drive is always necessary, for a lot of those spare scratch files and render files, you either want a large capacity M.2 or SATA SSD, or for the most storage bang for the buck, a hard drive. And fortunately, here in the Antec 900 PC case, you've got 4 hard drive bays supporting 3-inch hard drives here in the bottom of the PC case that you can access from the rear of the PC case with some simple pull-out drive bays. But if you wanted to maybe look into a high-end TLC SATA SSD with a consistent 500 megabyte read-to-write speed for like video editing or 3D modeling, you can fit some additional 2.5-inch SATA drives as well in the Antec 900, 3 in the back and 2 in the front, which if you do the math, 4 hard drive bays in the bottom plus 3 on the back brings it to 7, plus 2 in the front brings it to 9 total drive bays, which is synonymous with the Antec 900 name. Pretty cool, right? Next up, when it comes to power supplies, you're definitely going to want quite a bit of wattage. I actually went on the lower end in terms of power supplies with a 1200 watt 80 plus gold unit from Rosewell, which is enough for the Threadripper CPU that we have in this build, plus a single high wattage graphics card or PCI card. But if you are at all planning to throw in multiple PCI cards or graphics cards alongside an even more potent Threadripper CPU, you're going to want to look for a 1600 watt 80 plus titanium or platinum power supply at the minimum. 1200 watts will be fine for having a single card and a single Threadripper CPU, but there are some crazy configurations out there that may require even more power supplies, so keep that in mind. And I think that leaves us then to the choice of graphics card, which yes, I am going with an AMD GPU, not because it is the most optimal, but because this is a Threadripper system by AMD, and I just wanted to go with the Radeon card because it looked cooler in this system than the other NVIDIA card that I had. But if you are going to go with any sort of graphics card, unless you know it's going to be compatible with ROCm for AMD Radeon GPUs, you're going to want to go with an NVIDIA card. Whether it's a top of the line RTX card like an RTX 5090 or even a Quadro Workstation card, it's always going to be recommended to find something with a lot of VRAM, because whether it's AI, 3D modeling, or any sort of GPU computational workloads, you're always going to need a lot of VRAM to handle those tasks. And right now on the consumer end, the RTX 5090 is the only card of its kind with 32 gigabytes of RAM. Everything else is 16 or below. And then when it comes to the Workstation or Quadro cards, I believe it starts at 32 and it just keeps going up. And of course, you want to make sure you have a PC case that can support multiple graphics cards at once without potentially overheating them while they're running at load. And the good thing with the Antec 900 here is that right out of the box, it comes with plenty of fans to not just cool off your whole system and components, but it even comes with 2 additional 120mm fans right here below underneath your graphics cards to deliver fresh airflow to those different PCI cards. Which then I think brings us to the case, which I think is equally as important as every other component we've discussed so far. To pull off a high-end workstation build, you really need a case that is truly capable of many various hardware scenarios and configurations. And as you've seen so far here from the Antec 900, it can support multiple drive configurations, cooling configurations, PCI card configurations, thanks to the amount of PCI slots that are available in this PC case. And above all, it's got a ton of room to support all of those components, ensuring that not only do you have space, but enough room for fresh airflow to all of those components. And while all that sounds impressive, the build process in the Antec 900 whenever I was installing this PC into the case was more or less the same as any other typical standard PC build. It may seem really grand, but the layout and the building process is about the same as any other regular PC case, which is awesome. I mean, even on the rear, there's plenty of cable management at your disposal to clean up any sort of cable mess you might have in the rear of this PC case. And it even gives you additional flexibility where the power supply is. It can either be facing in the traditional direction, which is from the rear of the PC case facing inwards, or you can even mount it on technically the front of the PC case here on this front panel, where all the individual power slots are facing you when you open up the rear panel of the PC case. So that right there is giving you some power supply install flexibility. All in all, the Antec 900 I think is meant to be an end game PC case that can handle nearly all different configurations. I mean, heck, If you even wanted to go with an SSI EEB motherboard, that's even wider than this eATX port that I have here. You have a second set of grommets for additional cable management. So Antec have truly thought of everything they could with this Antec 900 to make it a worthy successor to the original, so I would feel more than comfortable recommending it for a high-end workstation build guide, as this case is basically supported for those sorts of systems. Heck, I think Antec even supply their own 360mm all-in-one water cooler specifically for Threadripper systems in collaboration with Asetek, like what I've got here right now inside the PC case. It can also do two 200mm fans in the front if you didn't want to do the included 3120. So again, just plenty of cooling scenarios are possible in this case. So with that, I think that wraps up the high-end workstation PC template for 2026. If you have any additional build configurations or questions, feel free to drop them in the comments down below. I'll see if I can answer them. But otherwise, I've got the full build list for this, including the Antec 900 in a PC build strategy link in the description down below. Once again, thank you to Antec for sponsoring this video and for sending over the Antec 900 case. And this is the ScatterVolt channel, signing out.